Today, I want to speak with you for a few minutes on the topic of the PPP, specifically on the forgiveness criteria for the PPP. Now, of course, there are a lot of information out there, a lot of information on the net, on the news, television, you name it. So it's all there. And so basically, what we'll be looking at today will not necessarily be anything new, but as usual here at Etienne's place, what we do, we just try to go straight to the basic information that will give you the clarity, the explanation that you seek. So then, the rush, the fervor, the activities to quickly put in the application to get this PPP loan with the promise of later forgiveness is basically over. And now most businesses are now approaching that time when proper submission need to be made by way of applying for forgiveness of this loan. Forgiveness essentially equates to the loan being converted to a grant, and as you know, by definition, grants are gifts, okay? No need to repay them. Usually, the normal structure, the normal system that is put in place for the granting of any kind of loan by banks or other institutions essentially looks at putting in a system, establishing structures, developing guidelines, installing controls, all those things, and then funds are made available. Now, when things move in that order, it means therefore that all parties are clear as to requirements, obligations, etc., and therefore are able to better toe the line to ensure that you're in compliance with all requirements. Of course, the PPP loan fall in a totally different category. There's no time to sit and work out the details and iron out the kinks out of it. So what we found happening, even at the application, during the application, is that different banks, different institutions basically had different guidelines as to how you go about applying, what is required, what is not required, what documentation you have to submit, etc., etc. So there was a little bit of confusion, but fortunately, eventually, more so, things were ironed out. People got their money and things. So now we're at the point where we're approaching the end of this 8-week run. And so businesses are coming to that time when you need now to formally apply for forgiveness of this loan. And part of the application process, naturally, is for you to prove, to substantiate, to justify, to indicate that you have adhered to by utilizing the funds in the manner that for which it was intended. And in a general sense, and we'll look a little more in a little more details down the road, in a general sense, 75% yes to be used for payroll costs, and the other 25% to be used for other business expenses, rent, mortgage, utilities, etc., etc. Good. Now, going back to the fact that there was no time to put a rigid structure in place to manage this loan process, it means that during the process, after the process, we're still having announcements, modifications, everything coming out trying to tighten up the structure. And so what it does is that it leaves the business persons, the recipients of loans, with a lot of questions. What should I do? What am I allowed to do? What should I not do? How do I do this? How do I do that? And as I said before, there are a lot of information there, straight from the SBA, straight from some of the banks and other financial institutions that had advanced the loans. Okay, so the information is there. Now, essentially, let me take you back to the whole background of this, or the structure of this thing. The SBA is the one who's actually making that well. The SBA as an institution is the one handling the loan granting process on behalf of the federal government, I would say. However, the SBA has used banks and other financial intermediaries to middleman between the small business owners who are seeking funding and the SBA. So basically, the SBA said to the banks, you handle the administrative work, you handle the paperwork, you accept the applications, you vet the documentation, you ensure that applicants are providing what is required. So usually, or what had happened is a business person will submit application to a bank, credit union, whatever it is, and that bank or credit union will take the information and go through and do a mini verification of the documentation. And that is why for some of you who applied, you will realize that after you applied, you were contacted for additional documentation, additional information to justify something one way or the next, because the onus was on the banks and the other financial institutions to help you to gather the correct information supported by documentation for application at the time, so that they could put through the process. So essentially, the SBA, right? The SBA, call it the federal government working through the SBA, whatever, relied on these banks and other intermediaries to ensure that an application coming through has been vetted and basically get the check mark, get the green light to move forward. Now that it is time to apply for the forgiveness, once again, picture this. Since the banks, etc., were the ones who got those documentations, reviewed them, and found them fit to be submitted through to the SBA for consideration and eventual approval, it means that now that it is time to provide proof to justify, then it now again falls on the back of the banks to ensure that those to which they issued money cannot come up with necessary documentation, cannot provide the necessary proof. Because here's what is likely to happen. For every, well, at the outset, the best case scenario is that a bank would have hoped that all the loans granted under the PPP would have had all the necessary documentation for justification, and so come this time, all those loans would be forgiven, converted to grants. Once that happens, then the banks would be paid. Okay, the banks would be paid, everybody would go home happy. So small businesses would have their loans converted to grants, the banks would get paid, the whole program would be closed, and everybody would go happy. To the extent that some of these loans cannot be properly justified, right? Supporting documentation cannot be provided and produced to satisfy requirements, then what is going to happen is the banks now will find themselves not being able to just collect and go home, but they are now strapped with these loans that they will have to service for the next 2 years. Because you'll recall that the PPP loan, if it is not forgiven, continues to be a 2 year loan at 1%, but you have up to 2 years to repay. So it means, therefore, the more PPP funding that is not successfully converted to a grant, forgiven, converted to a grant, it means it becomes a loan on the books of these institutions that has to be managed, that has to be administered for the next 2 years. Now, It's a lot we're talking about. Lot of applicants, lot of recipients of these loans. So can you imagine a bank had issued, say, 50,000, I'm just saying a number, 50,000 such PPP under its portfolio. Now, if 10,000 of those cannot be forgiven and converted to grants, then obviously the bank now has to service, it has put out its funding, and it has now to wait for 2 years to collect at 1%. And therefore it is trapped with the administration of these loans. And naturally, it would not have been prepared to take on this kind of activity. So it has now to ramp up to increase its capacity to handle these additional accounts for the next 2 years. So you see, it is in the interest of the bank to do all in their power to help the small businesses to come up with the necessary documentation to provide and to have those loans forgiven, converted to grants. All right. So what you're going to find happening is that there will be a close working relationship between the banks and the small businesses as you gather information. So, small business owners, you are going to be subjected to what could be regarded to as a mini audit by the bank initially. Why I'm calling this, why I'm calling it a mini audit, the banks are going to require that you provide certain documentation. They must be documents that prove the use and prove that the use was under the guidelines as set out. Okay, so it's interesting to note that we're going to find three categories of small businesses in this situation. There's going to be the first category where we have, businesses that are well organized, well structured. Okay, they are good stewards of their funds, they keep proper record, etc. So hey, once you ask for documentation, just like that, all documentation are provided, payroll registers, lease agreement, rent receipt, you name it, everything is provided, everybody is satisfied, loan is forgiven, converted to grant, done deal. The second category are going to be those who, yes, they have properly utilized the funds. They have utilized the funds under the established guidelines of payroll and other XYZ costs. Okay? They have. But because they are not good record keepers, because they have not documented the transaction flows in a manner that can be readily accessed and presented to the bank in a satisfactory manner, I said, because it has presented such a way, then here we have a problem. Not because you did not do the right thing in the spending, but you were less than a good steward as far as documentation, record keeping is concerned. So we have that second category that will have a little more headache for themselves and will give the banks a little more headache also, because it's going to take a little time to work through. They'll have to help you to put together this, etc., and guide. Okay. Then the third category are those who blatantly, outrightly utilize the funds to go to town and have a ball. Okay, misuse the funds in terms of, when I say misuse the funds, I'm not necessarily saying that it is used for any untoward, nefarious, whatever activity, so to speak. What I'm saying is that misuse in the sense that the funds were not used according to the guideline, which basically again is the 75% wages, salaries, 25% other expenses. So they may have used it to buy a piece of equipment. And yes, the business may need equipment. They may have used it to pay up some debts that they have, some creditors. And it's a legitimate business expense. It is a legitimate business expense, but it does not fall under the strict guidelines as to how the PPP money ought to be spent. So those are they that will find that they're in big headache, cannot provide the information, the documentation itself because from the get go they had not spent the money on those things as stipulated. All right. So more than likely for those loans, they will become 2-year loans to be serviced on the books of these banks. Fine. Now there, there's a line of argument, and I think it is credible to note. It is credible to note that if you were to go to a bank in a normal old way, say, okay, I want a loan of 10, 20, 30, 40, $100,000, then obviously you would not be getting a 1% loan. You would not be getting that. That being said, the rationale of some businesses is that okay, if I cannot prove and therefore cannot get the loan forgiven, then I'm strapped with a loan that I need to repay over the next 2 years. That is true. And I'm only going to be paying it at 1%. And so therefore it's a win-win situation. I got money up front, I did with it what I needed to do. I'm strapped with a loan for 2 years, but it's just 1%. What's the big deal? And it is true that the SBA has decided that in the guidelines, they have decided that, okay, loans up to $2 million will not be subjected to audit. In excess of 2 million, there will be some audit involved. Because as a matter of fact, even the application for forgiveness has a section that you need to check mark to indicate whether or not your loan was above $2 million, and then that would trigger additional disclosure requirements, so to speak. All right. So it means therefore that 2 million and less, you will not necessarily be audited and thing. So yes. So the reason is that hey, if I can get a 1% 2-year loan, of 100,000 at 1% over 2 years, man, it's a win-win-win situation. But basically, we're talking about these three categories. Those guys who have properly used the funds, proper documentation, ready to roll. Once the banks say, okay, send me your documents, it is there, it is satisfied, everything is good. Second category, the guy spent the funds properly under the required headings. However, because of his sloppy record keeping, it's going to take a little time putting things together. The third guy didn't spend it on the required in the required manner, don't have documentation, has already resigned himself to the fact that hey, yeah, this is just going to be a loan. I'm not even going to try to get it forgiven because I know it will not be. But hey, I'm still a winner because I'm 1% 2-year loan. Where do you go and get that? Okay, so that is that. Now, what it means is that yes, the banks will be working together with the small businesses to put things together. But remember, most of the interaction between banks and small businesses will be, via internet, telephone, etc., etc. What you're going to find is that for businesses who have their bookkeepers, their accountants, financial advisors, whatever, your professional that you work with, right, are going to be very integral to the process. Naturally, if you already have like a bookkeeper, an accountant, a bookkeeper, then one would expect that this person would already be on the ball, putting together documentation, keeping things clear so that once the call is made, things can be issued. If you do not have such a person, then I'm not implying that it is anything difficult. So maybe something that you can take on yourself to put it together. But in the absence of you being able to do that, then of course, this is when you will have to really draw very close to your accountant, your bookkeeper, etc., to guide you, to help you to really identify, sort, categorize, and properly present the required documentation. Okay? So very, 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 very important. The next thing I would want to point out is that even now, the guidelines, the PPP forgiveness guidelines as issued by the SBA, is still in the works, because right now I think there's an 11-page document out there that sets out quite a bit of the structure, the system, the guideline. But even now, there are still other things being considered. One of the very important things to note is that at the outset, the stipulation was that you need to have spent and therefore be ready to report on these funds within 8 weeks. And the question was asked, yes, 8 weeks starting when, ending when? It is 8 weeks from the time that the funding hit your account. 8 weeks from the time that the funding hit your account. Okay, so some persons who got early draw are now coming up at the time when they need to be getting everything ready. Others would have a little more time, but basically it is 8 weeks from the time the funds hit your account that you need now to have as well report. You need to report the kind of transactions, the activities that went on using the funds. Okay, so that is very important to note, and I thought I would just give this a tip because a lot of questions are coming at me, and I know, yes, as I said before, the information is there on the internet, etc. But sometimes, yes, the basic things are buried into a lot of information which are pertinent, relevant, important, but then hey, we try to just take out the main ingredients and give it to you. So go ahead if you're not yet ready to roll. Hope this will stir you into cranking up. Start to pull your little documentation here and there. If you're aware that okay, you do not have things that are as adequate as they should be, start to get yourself sorted. If you need some help, speak to your bookkeeper, your accountant, etc., and try to get things moving. Try to get things moving. Now, in closing, what I want to, and this is just my opinion, this is just my opinion. I think it's worthwhile sharing it with you. Yes, it is a fact that the SBA, yes, have decided that they will not audit loans less than $2 million. I think 2 million is a cutoff point. Anything above 2 million may be subject to audit. Anything 2 million less will not be audited. Fine. And so one would go away with the comfort in mind that I got 1.8 million. I have totally misused these funds. As a matter of fact, I may have even, received the funds on the less than transparent means, so to speak, see what is and what is not. And therefore, but I'm not worried because the guideline is that anything 2 million or less will not be audited. No, this is where my personal opinion comes in. Be careful. Even if you fall below this $2 million line, I would think that if it is blatantly obvious that from the application time through the utilization to the point when you're required to apply for forgiveness, if everything is beeping red light, red light, red light, red light, it is my opinion that although it may be under the $2 million mark, I don't think that you are immune fully to audit. It may be a different type of audit because if there's some sort of shady kind of thing, then of course, we may have a different emphasis, on the type of audit conducted. But I would say to you that you know yourselves, and so if that is the case, then yeah, we would have to start to shake up and decide exactly how to respond if and when that call is made. If and when that call is made. Okay? So there you have it. I just thought I would just give you a little background as to, those structures, so the thinking, how the thing came about, what are the things that were not in place that has led us to this point where we now need to be scuffling to see if we can get things in order. And even the authorities themselves are still getting, tightening up things and getting things together. All right. Now, as a part two, what I will do is kind of go through some of the things that some of the salient things that are included on the PPP application for forgiveness. Okay, some of the things that you'll be required to provide. So as a guide, so you'll see exactly what you already have, what you need to work on, and so get yourself ready so that when the call comes, you're ready to respond. Okay? Good, good, good. All said, I trust that whatever funding you got, you had applied it in a manner that definitely was beneficial to the business and definitely to beneficial and advantageous to those who were kept in a job and so was provided for. So once again, David here. We haven't seen each other in quite a while, I know. And I'm not going to try to blame it on COVID because long before COVID, I was sort of MIA. But it's all good. I'm keeping safe, and I hope you, all my clients and friends, are doing the same. And please, let's continue to be intelligent. Continue to act wisely. All right. We know what is happening out there. Places are opening up, etc. But you know yourself, man. Come on. Just do the right thing. Keep yourself safe. Keep your family safe. Keep your friends safe, and do the right thing. I can't close but say that's just my thing. Trust in God, trust in God, Put yourself in his hand, call on him and let him know that yes, Lord, I'm trying my best to do what I can, but I know ultimately it is always in your hand. It is always in your hand. What I do is just my little addition, my little contribution to your greater plan because you have decided that you're going to stoop low enough to allow me to work with you. But I know that my effort is secondary to yours. And so trust in God, okay? Take care of yourself, take care of your family, and I'll see you for part two of this presentation. Bye.